All right, sorry I was a minute late. Let's call to order the KMPUD meeting for March 3rd, 2023. Bob Epstein, president, is on vacation, so I'll be chairing this meeting today. Peter, do you want to do roll call?
Sure. Schroeder?
Here.
Minituranda?
Here.
Epstein? Absent? Perot?
I got a text from Bertrand that he was ill.
Okay, so Perot's absent. Dornberg here. So we have 3 board members participating and 2 absent.
Okay, so Eric, can you clarify the issue around quorum today?
Yes, so we have a majority of our board present at the meeting, which is a quorum, which is 3. So we can proceed. And if anyone would like to comment on anything, please use the raise your hand function.
All right, any other announcements, Eric?
No.
All right, comments from the audience?
Howard has a question.
Okay.
So this is not on today's agenda. I'm speaking about the propane situation. Yesterday, after 50 years of coming to Kirkwood, I had to come over the Kingsbury grade because even Highway 89 was not open. There's one easy way to get to Kirkwood, relatively, and that's from the Carson Valley. So when I hear that a truck is jackknifed trying to come up from the Jackson side, I just scratch my head. Why are we not getting all of our service from the most reliable place, which is from the east, straight up Highway 88? I do not understand why we're hanging by our fingernails on getting propane deliveries. And I would like to know what spending $1 or $2 million on an additional propane tank would have done for us right now. It seems to me it would do nothing. So if we need to get a competitor for Kiva Energy, let's do it. If we have to go to Southern California to get propane, let's get it from Southern California. If the president of the board and the general manager have to ask Kiva Energy, the top people there, to meet with them to do something to change the current situation, we should do that. Spending another $1 million to $2 million on another propane tank would be horrendous. I can't even believe some of you board members ran as environmentalists. No environmentalist is investing in more propane technology today. We need to make things more reliable to get us through the next 10 or 20 years. And if we're going to do some planning and invest some money in facilities, let's do it in electrification. I would like to see a plan right now, and somebody on this staff should be working on a plan for electrifying everything that the PUD itself owns. Get rid of all the propane that the PUD owns. Work with Kirkwood to get rid of the propane that Vail Resorts is buying. Let's reduce our reliance on propane. We have the electricity. We invested, I don't know, $30, $40 million to upgrade. We have the most reliable electricity system in the whole state of California. I can't even imagine that anybody would seriously consider investing $50,000 to increase our propane storage. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Howard. Any other comments from the audience?
I don't see any, John.
Written comments from the public?
One did come in very late. We didn't get into the packet. It will appear in next month's packet.
Okay. Okay. Adoption of the consent calendar. Any items to be discussed or removed?
Yes, I would just note that items B and C, due to the timing of this meeting, obviously we just sent out bills, so there is no B or C. So you would only adopt A and D, as in dog.
Right.
Okay, Dornbrook so moved. We adopt A and D.
My second.
All right.
That was Minute-Taranda.
That's right.
Okay, we have to go to the roll call. Schroeder.
Here, or yeah, aye.
Minute-Taranda.
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye. Epstein and Perot absent.
All right. So that takes us to item 9. Eric, you want to kick it off with the resolution?
Yes. So we've been working on this for about 4 years, in various iterations. And at the last meeting, the board chose to adopt Model D, which is the financial model that everything was built off of. And so that's what you see incorporated into the rate methodology and apportionment. So what we're doing today, and the only thing we're doing today, is a resolution of intent for the board to go forward, start the process of a special tax, CFD, and the actual vote on whether we do it or not would be at the April 4th meeting, which is a Monday. So that's where this sits. So that all we're doing today is the board is showing their intent to move forward with this process. So the other thing I would add is the timeline is very tight. So, and I apologize, it should be April 3rd is the Monday we're going forward, because that was the end of that pushed up to the end of or pushed up to a weekend, which I know works for our board best. But anyway, the board would also rescind the existing ordinance on the current fire assessment as part of this if it passed. So we do have our consultant here, DTA, as well as our bond counsel, Jones Hall, who are the subject matter experts in all these things. So I don't know if perhaps, Dave, you just want to kind of go over maybe hit the process a little bit more clearly than I did and explain that to our customers.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Eric. Dave Fama here from Jones Hall. We're a firm that does a lot of these community facilities districts. And it is a process to form one of these. It is, according to statute, the government code, of the state. And the government code lays out the steps that are followed. And this is the first step if a CFD is going to be formed. What this step does is it basically announces to the public that, hey, we, the board, are considering, not making a definite decision today, but are considering forming this special taxing district. If formed and passed by the voters, it would allow the Kirkwood PUD to put a special tax, levy on the property tax bills of the parcels in the Kirkwood district. So there are 3 things that are sort of before you today to acknowledge your intent to proceed with, and one is the boundary map, which the other consultants can walk you through if need be, but I think my understanding is it's basically the same as the map of the district, comprising the 3 different counties. Yeah, thanks. There it is. For this one, looks like it's the one for Alpine County, and if you scroll down, I think it would be there's Amador, and then a little bit of El Dorado. Actually, these maps, I think, each one's the same in terms of the boundary of the Kirkwood district, but we have 3 maps because they correspond with the 3 different counties for later filing. Anyway, so that's the intent of the boundary, and then the intent of the services that can be financed. If you'll go down on that, I think that will come after the maps. No, that's the rate method. Well, that's one of the 3 components. Let's cover that now, and then we'll look at the services that can be financed. So this is what's called the rate and method. This document runs several pages long, and it basically sets out what the special tax, if passed, what the special tax would be on each parcel. And so this isn't a fixed amount. This is an amount that is calculated every year. And what this document will contain is the maximum amount of tax that can be levied on each parcel. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the amount that's going to be levied. It's just the maximum. So every year the district will compute what the need is and levy the amount on each parcel that's needed. It cannot exceed the maximum that's stated in here. And we can go over that in more detail if the board wants to. Let me continue with the process though. So the third element that you'd be expressing an intent about, go down, it should be the last exhibit, I believe, is the list of services that the tax can pay for. And let's wait till we get there. These services, nope, keep going. Should be another exhibit.
There's nothing after that, Dave. That was the end of the RMA. That was the last exhibit C.
Okay, well then it must be exhibit B. I'm sorry, scroll up and maybe we went too quick there. Nope, good. Okay, A is the maps, so go down slowly. 1, 2, 3 maps. And then go slow. There it is. Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, so this is what the special tax can fund. It's broad. You can read it there, fire suppression services and so forth. So we don't list line items. We just, list generally what can be financed, and then it's up to the Kirkwood PUD to decide each year, what's going to be part of the levy. So you're expressing an intent today if you pass this reso. What you're also saying is that we'll have a public hearing on this. A notice will be posted and published in a local newspaper for the April 3rd public hearing. At that hearing, you will see if there's what we call a majority protest. That would be a protest by 50% or more of the registered voters in your district. If by chance you do get 50% or more of the registered voters saying, no, we don't want this, either in person or via a written document, then you cannot proceed to form the district. That doesn't happen too often, but it is in the law, and that is possible. If you don't get the majority protest, then it would be your option as the board to proceed to express your formation of the district and then go to vote to authorize it to levy a special tax. The vote would be at least 90 days after April. I forget, Eric, what date are we targeting for the vote?
July 5th.
Yeah, okay, if the board proceeds and passes that in April and decides to move forward, it would go to a mailed ballot election on that July date. The county would compile the votes, announce the results, and you would be in a position, if it were approved by 2/3 of the registered voters, that is 2/3 of the registered voters that return votes. 2/3 of the registered voters that return votes is a successful election in terms of authorizing the tax, and it could go on the tax rolls this coming August for 23-24. So I'll pause there. That's the big picture of what we're doing and where this might go in April.
I do have one clarification, and the RMA, the defined term authorized fire protection services includes medical services as well. Should that be consistent with Exhibit B?
Yes, yeah, that definitely should be. And we evolved these descriptions over the last couple of weeks. And so if it's not in Exhibit B, it should be added, and that could be something you can express in your actions today.
Okay, we'll do that.
And I was going to build on that, John, was like, and maybe Rick, this is a question for you, of all of the things that the team does today. Like, my understanding is like lockouts would be something that wouldn't be considered medical or fire. Is that something that would be also covered in this, or do we need to amend language? And if we wanted to continue doing that, and I guess, Rick, the question more generally for you is, are we covering enough in the language that we have?
I believe we are covered enough in the language that we have. And a lockout is not typically a fire department activity. We do other citizen assist activities, but again, I think the description that's presented is correct.
The description, as John pointed out, that we should amend B to be consistent with the language highlighted here. Is that what you're saying?
If it's possible, it just would help, honestly, to sell the resolution or to sell it, but adding medical services to the headers, if it doesn't delay the process, would not hurt.
Okay. I would say, John, I agree with that change. I would like that language to be consistent, including that. And Eric, if you're okay with
So
that.
we can update Exhibit B, David, just to have that.
Okay. We'd probably go fire protection, prevention, suppression services, and medical services, including the costs and so forth.
Yes.
Okay. We'll do that. No problem.
Yeah, that one exhibit's not prohibitive of changing things. It's changing the overall title, Doug. That would be an issue. We have the counties actually require Mylar maps, which are being delivered to Kirkwood as we speak. And we'd have to republish all those maps. And we have 15 days to do it from today. So not changing that would be very important, but we can change Exhibit B.
Got it. Thank you. David, I had one other question that just, you touched on this a little bit, and from our preceding conversation at our last board meeting, which I don't think you were at, you said something to the effect of the value that we're proposing, I think it was $513 per space, per parking space in here. That's the maximum that we could charge in any given year. And when we had talked about this as a board previously, we considered, we called it models A, B, C, and D, where they'd have varying levels. And Eric, you can correct me. I think D, which was the one that this calculation was based off of, was one of the more expensive in terms of what that would be. So does that mean if in the future we decided to change from the scenario, which is model D, which is what drove this pricing, would we be able to move to, say, a model C version, which was less expensive because it is now no longer at the maximum, but we couldn't, of course, go above the 513 plus CPI? Is that correct?
Yeah. So yeah, you corrected one thing I was going to say. It's not the maximum we can charge in any year because there is a CPI in there.
Correct. Yes. I saw the CPI adjustment of like 2%, right. Max 6, something like that.
Board could, as we reevaluate this annually, the estimates include the efforts of consultant to manage this for us, like we do our current CFD. And so, yes, as a new house gets built or as a new condo gets built, multi-unit condo or whatever, and the parking spaces adjust, those things can all be handled annually as well. And the board could, and I do want to remind for those people who weren't here last time, Model C is not going to work, as Chief Ansel's.
Understood.
Yeah.
But
so
I'm just saying, like, in a world in which we have lots of volunteers and we wanted to maybe revert back to something less, we would still have the flexibility to go to less of a tax. We would not have the option to propose model whatever B or C that was less expensive and then say, oh no, we want to do the more expensive version. Is that a correct statement?
And Dave, chime in here. We can always go lower than what we're using, which is Model D, but we can never go higher.
Yeah, that's correct. And Eric, if the board wanted to put on record a lower amount, in other words, if this maximum is adopted, as I said, you could levy less than that, any year. If the board wanted to officially reduce the maximum, then the board could come back and take action to formally reduce it. So there's kind of the annual levy what you want kind of consideration, and then there would be a more formal levying of the max forever if they wanted to.
And that would go through the same process where we have to have a vote, I imagine, and things like that.
You don't need a vote to lower it. You would only need a vote if you're going to raise it.
Oh, I see. So the board can take action without going out with the public ballot to lower it, but not, of course, raise it.
Correct. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and the implementation of the service isn't defined in detail in this resolution either, or in the CFD. So if instead of having 4 EMTs, we wanted 3 and more firefighters, we could do that. Right.
As long as the cost, yeah, as long as the costs were within what we were raising.
It's all just tied to cost. So whether we outsource or do it with permanent employees is at our discretion in the future too.
Yes.
Correct.
There's a question from the public if you're ready for that, John, or I don't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Larry Parker. Had a question. Medical services is awful broad, and I think it was even mentioned. What you mean is just emergency medical services or EMTs. Is that correct? Shouldn't that be tightened up?
No, it really shouldn't be tightened up. It should be more broad so that it gives us more flexibility in terms of spending. If we did want to, Amador Fire Protection District, they're looking at starting their own ambulance service. So, and that would include a advanced life. So the more we narrow this, the less we can use the money for it. So it's intentionally left broad so that it would cover anything and everything that the fire department would do.
That makes sense, Larry?
Having it so open-ended is kind of scary to me, but yeah, I understand your answer.
Okay, I think Beth has her hand up as well.
Okay.
Hi, this is Beth McAllister from Kirkwood Firewise. And I guess this question is for Chief Ansel. Are you envisioning that the prevention services include anything for wildfire prevention?
Well, fire protection services would include not just structure fire, but wildland fire as well.
But I mean, on the prevention side.
Are you talking about creating a chipping program and doing defensible space inspections?
Yes.
I think the fire department could support CAL FIRE and the counties with those activities. But at this time, we're not intending and increasing the cost of this and adding those services as well.
Yeah, I guess if we ended up with permanent firefighters, there may be other things they could do, such as not necessarily the CAL FIRE legal defensible space inspections, but at least, some consultation and things like that.
I would fully believe that they would support the community's activities and also have the opportunity to actually maybe get grants that we apply for, since we would have a more stable a work pool, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Questions?
One other just general thought is that the methodology talked about here. Was there anything that we should be knowing about? I read through it and it makes sense. Is there anything of importance that was interesting or that we should be thinking about that we might not have seen or noticed as we were thinking about the methodology to compute this relative to other methods that you considered, or anything like that that'd be interesting for us to hear or understand?
No, this is 4 years in the making, quite honestly, Doug, and we had to figure out a way to determine the benefit received more accurately than combustible space, which is currently what we use. This seemed to be the method that was quantifiable, defensible. Obviously, our bond counsel has been reviewing it and looking at it and knows that it's logical. Our consultant's professional. This is what they do. I didn't hear anyone balk at it. And like I said, this is 4 years in the making of trying to come up with a way to quantify benefit received.
Yeah. Any comment from DTA on that?
This is Andrea from DTA. I think what Eric said was right. We are consultants that prepare rate and methods. All all the time. And, this is based on parking, which is what the district felt would be most appropriate, but the rate and method itself is fairly straightforward. But happy to answer any specific questions. We worked really closely, my office, with district staff to identify the parking spaces, which is the basis for the special tax. I think that's probably the most unusual part, is just the determination of the parking spaces. Everything else is very standard and straightforward.
Thanks, Andrea.
You're welcome.
Got a few questions, John, if you want to go to those again.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sandy.
Yes. Hi, this is Sandy Goldberg. I am supportive of what I'm hearing, and I've read through all of this. I think it's a wise move for us to go in this direction. My question is, will EMT automatically 100% for sure be covered, or will the special district have an option to exclude it if they can't either make it happen or afford it? Because that would be one of the most important things.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sandy. That's a really good point. The proposal we currently have from Amador Fire Protection District, which is the one we use for the pricing, they are firefighters / EMTs. And that's part of the contract we would have with them, is that they would provide those specific services. So it's not going to be a bait and switch.
Okay.
But good point. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, can you hear me, Eric?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. Yeah, just a question, I guess, or in a few comments and thoughts, the reaction to regarding the parking piece. I can certainly see how that being the basis for the cost allocation might make sense in some communities. I have concerns about that, based upon a few different factors. One, is there somewhere where we can see the data of responses that the Kirkwood Volunteer Fire Department typically has over the course of a year? I apologize if it's in the packet. I haven't had a chance to scrub all of it, because I think that would help kind of just look at what the current volume is. I guess I should have started with, I totally understand the challenge here in terms of the inability to attract enough folks to serve the community year round as volunteer fire departments. So staying with the status quo, I understand it's problematic and not good for any of us here. I just, on the parking spaces, I think that would be based then upon the notion that, the volume of people coming into Kirkwood in the winter, which, mid-December through March is when the maximum, the main volume of folks coming in are the cause of upwards of 3/4 of the calls in a year. Because the quick math on the parking spaces, as I see it, as a mountain, we would be on the hook for 3/4 of the $1.7 million potential cost, basically costing us $1.2 million. And I think I want to make sure the consultants are aware and everybody else is aware during that ski season, from the beginning of the ski season, beginning of December is scheduled, and then through, this year, April 30th, we actually highly subsidize, to the tune of 6 figures, the Barton Clinic. And so for medical calls, we are that our volume creates, that is not at all on the Kirkwood Valley Fire Department. That's on the Barton Clinic. It's actually staffed with doctors, nurses, and the highest level of care there. And then they're transported if they need to be to Barton or Renown, et cetera. So I feel like that subsidy is in place because we recognize that in the winter we are driving a significant amount of volume to Kirkwood and putting a strain on certain aspects of the community. But from a medical response and fire response, I feel like we're covering and meeting that obligation by subsidizing the clinic. So I guess I would challenge the appropriateness of the parking piece, and then ask if, over the course of this being considered, when it was first brought up, I think about 4 years ago, from Eric Rickard, if other solutions were run to ground. Because all of our patrollers, for example, we require them to have EMTs, and I could think of potential win-win solutions for the valley as well as the mountain, because a lot of our patrollers were not able to employ in the summer. And if we were able to partner and help provide some of these services through our patrol, maybe that's a way to lessen the burden and the overall cost of setting up this facilities district. So I'd like to run those around, but I guess my biggest concern is just the notion of the parking being the driver, when my assumption is that's not the majority of the calls aren't going to those folks. Certainly not 3/4 of the calls in an entire year. I can't imagine that is the volume, matches the volume that the fire department's responding to. But I don't know that for a fact, so I'm just asking the question.
Rick, you have any commentary on that, or?
I mean, relatively speaking, our call volume is low annually. It goes from 80 to 125, 135 calls. However, it's a service that is provided to the community no matter what it is, whether it's EMS or fire. And I hear what Matt's saying and understand what he's saying. If he's looking for me to say that 2/3 of our calls are resort related, it's probably not. But I can't say that the next call won't be, something that the resort needs from Kirkwood Fire. So, and the clinic does impact the emergency system. It's purely medical, but it taxes the system overall. So, and there's only so many ambulances in the El Dorado Medical Services Basin area. So on a busy Saturday or Sunday, the resorts tax the system, but they also pay for it as well. So I hear what he's saying, but again, if the community wants a fire service and medical service, that's not when the resort's open, after hours, during the summer, we're the ones that provide it.
After hours in the winter and in the summer is what you meant.
Yeah, after hours when the resort's closed, it's Kirkwood Fire.
Matt had a question again.
Yeah, no, Rick, I appreciate that. And I guess I'm just not seeing the correlation between, certainly, yeah, we've had to need your services in the middle of the night. I remember standing out there with you with the quad, and so I think something, more of a facility-based approach, which we would still, likely bear a larger burden than any individual, homeowner or even condo association might make more sense. It's just the parking one just doesn't correlate to volume in my mind, and how to proportion the cost. I'm not at all suggesting because we provide the clinic that we shouldn't share in any of the costs, because obviously we have a number of facilities. I just think it should be based upon the facilities and the typical type of calls versus this methodology, because it may work for some other communities that are a little bit more straightforward, but I just want to make sure that, especially the consultants who are recommending this, understand that I don't feel like, I think there was flaws in the parking methodology, I guess is my point.
I mean, Eric, can you one other DTA, or can you talk about the other things that you thought about in terms of the processes and how you feel about the parking as the methodology?
Again, it was the most quantifiable way to define benefit received. The current, for example, the current assessment is based on combustible space. Well, if there's nothing built, but it's a used area, there's no way of quantifying people that are using it. So how do you quantify, all the things that go into a vacation community? It's a unique situation, and then this was the one that really came out the best. We looked at originally, and this is before DTA, so this is years and years ago. What about square footage? What about lot size? All those things. It just, all the other things we looked at missed a lot of parcels that receive benefit from fire services in the traditional method. I don't see any other questions, John. So I might want to entertain a motion from someone if someone wants to make a motion, that now would be the time, I guess.
Yeah, I guess Peter or Doug.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see the update to Exhibit B as part of any changes that we discuss. But I think other than if we can make that change, then I would motion to move forward just to go to public hearing for more conversation.
Yeah, I concur with that, and I'm willing to second that motion. That's Dornbrook.
Any further discussion? Okay, Peter.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Mindertranda.
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye. Epstein and Perot absent.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And so just for everybody, this will be on the Monday, April 3rd, will be the second public hearing on this issue. So we'll get I know Brittany's on here, our clerk of the board, so I'll make sure and we'll get you an updated Exhibit B. So Peter, you'll need to go by the office probably today or next week and sign 3 copies of the resolution and some maps you need to sign.
Yeah, I can do that this afternoon. And Brittany's in the office right now, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
So after the meeting, I'll go over there.
Okay, and we can get you an updated Exhibit B pretty quickly. Dave, could you just do a quick Exhibit B and email me just with that addition of medical services to that description?
Yeah, Eric, I was doing it as we were talking. I'll send it to you right now.
Perfect, great. Well, so I think DTA and Jones Hall, thank you for your time, and you're free to go. Spend the rest of your Friday here.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, Tommy, you're up next with finances.
That's great. Thanks everyone for joining us. Well, there it is. The biggest thing in that first line item, I had to prod Shell, unfortunately, for the invoice for February. They greatly apologize. They're normally not this late, but I brought them, and so I was able to get the number at least, but it wasn't actually done before these reports were entered. So that number for February is 197,000. Yep. Which brings the cost of electricity to 7.3, which is just above the average of 16.7 in this fiscal year, but it's much less than it was in December, which is 31 cents. So good at least. But the main things, so when you're looking at the year to date for the income statement, it showed 361.78 as above budget, but it should actually be 164,717. And we'll also follow through with the electric, bringing it actually down to a loss of 81,147. But looking at the other funds, they're looking pretty good. The water fund, as shown, is actually up from budget year to date, 103,000. January is very close to budget. The water and wastewater actually is as well year to date up from budget, 181,000. But January is down 14,000 and a half, just because of maintenance and the operation costs of the plant. The electric fund we already talked about, but it is a loss at the moment of 81,000. And I'm cutting out for folks. Am I cutting out to anyone else?
A little bit.
Shoot. If there's any questions at the end of this, please feel free. I apologize. I'm sitting next to my router at the moment. But
get a better router. Okay, so are there any questions for Tommy on any of this? Any specifics?
Cut out for like I was just make sure I understand the electricity pricing. You said it was, obviously it was very high in the summer. We talked about that last time. Where would we end now, or what was the number you came to now?
17.3 cents per kilowatt.
73 a kilowatt hour. Thank you.
And the average was 16.4 for the fiscal year.
Through our fiscal year through now. Gotcha.
Yes, since
July 1 through today.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay. I guess we'll move on to we don't have performance reporting because the timing, the bills went out obviously, so we didn't have that yet. So we'll probably just skip on to the propane meter shed, electric meter shed update. If that's okay with you, John?
Yep.
All right. So two things of note on the meter shed update. One is that you'll see for residential, we no longer have anyone in the high category for February or even through until May. That is not because they have been completed, but it is because they've received extensions due to presenting plans and working with the district. So the one single family home and the one duplex that have been in the winter have been moved out to a later date. We're still working with them.
And Brandy, sorry, is that moved out and reflected on this chart or not? Like,
yes.
Is that one of the two that's in July or whatever then, right? So
exactly. One has been moved to May and the other to July.
Thank you.
That's correct. And then the other thing of note on commercial meter protection is that you also see that the ones that were here in the winter are no longer here. So construction has been completed on both of the remaining HOAs that were outstanding. The inspections have been done. We've received information from an engineer on one of those, and those have been taken off the list completely because those are complete. So we are still making progress on the meter sheds.
It's good. No short-term emergencies this time.
I know. We're very excited about that.
Yeah.
I would just note June.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Any questions for Brandy on that? Anything else?
Yeah. What will we do with 47 in June?
We've been working with them for 2 years. We hope they will complete it with the 2+ years they've had.
Okay.
And just as a reminder myself, the mediums do get shut off. It's not they can't sign a waiver, or they can.
Mediums are not eligible. They're eligible for the waiver to give them an extension if they find within a certain amount of time, but they still have to make the physical improvements as well.
Lows were the only ones that can sign.
That's why they're so far out, is most of these, because they had signed within the proper time. Yeah. Okay. I guess moving on to the goals.
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah, the next item is we updated general manager's objectives. You want to go through that, Eric?
Yeah, I just briefly, we had talked about this in closed session, and so this is what was come up with. So it never received it wasn't reported out, so it's just now being put on a public agenda item for adoption. But it's exactly what was discussed last month in closed session. But since Bob didn't report out any action, we need to officially have a vote to adopt this.
Okay. Yeah. And the overview of this was to continue with goals that were set previously for the year, but also to add in more operational goals and communication goals. So that's really the basic change to this. All right.
So I don't know, do we want to do a motion to adopt these since we've done that previously for adoption of them, John? Okay. Probably should.
Okay, Peter or Doug, you want a motion?
I'll motion.
Okay, moved by Minichiranda and seconded by Dornbrook. I'll take a vote. Schroeder?
Aye.
Minichiranda?
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye. Epstein and Perot absent.
Okay. I think we're
the major
projects. This is just we've updated this. A lot of this came out of the goals discussion in the last few meetings. This has been continually revised. So just to go through it briefly, with all the projects we have, as we talked about, we've pushed out hydrology a whole year. That project has been put on pause for the time being. Staff has received the EV charging portion of the electric master plan, and next week we should have the balance of it. Staff will review that, get our comments back to the consultant, and once he makes our changes, we'll be bringing this back to the board. The propane master plan, I am working with a consultant to get a scope and fee for the master plan. I should have that. I'm supposed to have it this week, but he's got COVID, so hopefully I'll have it next week. And again, we'll bring that back to the board for their consideration. The master plan.
I have a question for that too. Is that going to address demand as well as supply?
No, that's not what a master plan does. Master plan is more about capital and infrastructure, aging infrastructure, and capital improvements and operation and maintenance. It's not really a demand side. That would be a completely different document and a different consultant, quite frankly. But there's not to say we couldn't have if we wanted to consider that in the budgeting process to do that, we could. But that document, anything relative to demand side management would have nothing to do with the master plan. The pipes are still getting older and the valves need to be replaced. Has nothing to do with whether someone has a smart thermostat or not, but we could do a separate thing, certainly, down those lines to talk about that. And that was, I think one thing, I think maybe Doug had mentioned, maybe that's something we look at through planning, is how do we incentivize people to, do a smart meter and demonstrate reduction of usage in order to receive, it wouldn't be PBC because that's electric, but some sort of incentive from the district. But that could be done separate from the master plan. Yeah,
this isn't really the part of the agenda to discuss that, but I think we have to get that going very quickly.
I mean, it's a future project, so it's okay to have to talk about that. But as we get into budgeting, if we do want to do that, then we should plan on incorporating that into next year's budget.
I mean, the demand side of it has a ecological positive effect, and it probably there's a possibility we could address the issue faster than more capacity, right?
Yeah.
More capacity. If we move forward with more capacity, it's going to take a long time.
Correct. More capacity is definitely going to take a long time. I mean, just and again, you know, it could be the other option we talked about previously too. Again, on the demand side, well, maybe not the demand side, but at least from a demand perspective from the district, we could incentivize people to come off of district propane and do their own. That would reduce our demand side issues. That'd be another.
Yeah, I think we should leave it kind of broad for planning.
Yeah. No.
What's most effective for conversion and conservation during peak times, all those items.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, so we can definitely consider that as we go forward. I would note that a third of our demand is from our top 5 users, just to give you an idea. So,
which might be good or bad. If you know, it's like
it's bad.
Could be a lot of bang for the buck if you come up with some sort of solution. On the other hand, if it's not addressable, then that's a bad thing.
Right. So, master plan for wastewater. We'll probably be issuing that RFP and getting started on that once the snow melts. Given where we are today, that keeps being months and months longer than we thought it was going to be, because we have to actually put boots on the ground and see stuff physically. So we're waiting to see on that one. Water plant master plan will come next calendar year. The OGOS project is going to proceed this summer. That hasn't changed. Nothing really has changed on this. We do have the proposal on the design and environmental proposal for the new propane tanks and roofs. The operations committee has directed staff to proceed with a pre-design only at this time. The total fee was $180,000 for design and environmental, so we're just proceeding with the pre-design to see if it's even feasible to build another tank on our current site, or if there's any other location where one could be built. So we'll proceed with the pre-design first, and then bring that back to the board. Wastewater treatment plant, we have 90% plans in hand. Due to the weather and staff not being all together, we haven't been able to get together and take all of our comments and put them into one giant document and go back to the consultant. So we've been delayed by a week, and we'll probably be delayed next week as well. So we're about 2 weeks behind schedule, but it's important that our staff's comments get incorporated by the design engineer. So we're not going to skip any steps on that, but we're still proceeding. So when we all get back together, we will be doing that, sending the comments back to them. Then they'll be sent to USDA's engineer for their review and comments. And then the 100% or the bid plans will be ready to go after that. So still trucking along. And that's really all I had on major projects. Any questions?
All right. Well, general manager's report.
Well, I'm not going to steal Rick's thunder on operations. He has a lot to say about snow removal, I'm sure. But it's been a trying couple of weeks, and I mean that literally, trying to get up the hill, trying to get down the hill, trying to shovel out. It's been pretty onerous, but we have been very lucky to have most of our snow removal staff on mountain. We just had major equipment issues, and then our mechanic was snowed off, so he came back yesterday. We authorized him to drive all the way around and to pay him to do so, because we needed him that desperately, and we got it done. And he's fixed a machine and a half, I believe, since he's gotten back. So we've authorized overtime to get the machines up and running, so we can take advantage of all our people being up here during this storm, the end of this storm cycle, and heading into tomorrow's storm cycle. Other than that, I don't have anything else, unless there's any specific questions.
Questions? All right, operations.
Well, Eric didn't steal all my thunder. Snow removal, as Eric indicated, it's been really trying. But as of this morning, with the mechanic being back, we out of the 6 trucks we have 3 of them back in service. Working on the 4th one now. But it's, the machines are getting tremendous amount of wear and tear out there. And it's going to be an expensive year with maintenance for snow removal. We also had to order a set of chains. We went through a set of chains on the 950 GC, which we thought we'd get through at least a couple of years. And lo and behold, it's time to replace those chains. So we got another $6,000 out for a new set of chains. Hopefully that'll show up this week. Staff has been working for the last 7 days, some for the last 9 to 11 days. Others actually got a day off yesterday. Some are getting today off today. And we're still buried out there. A lot of driveways that are still not done. So we appreciate the homeowners' patience. We will get to you when we can. But with all the challenges and now the lack of storage with all the contracts, and if you're in Kirkwood and you drive around, you can understand why. But again, just appreciate everybody's patience. We're doing the best we can with staff and equipment available. And just a side note with snow removal, it sounds like the Carson Spur will open up tonight at 5 o'clock. And as Howard mentioned before, not only was Kirkwood impacted by heavy snow and a lot of it quickly, all the passes were impassable, blizzard-like conditions. And we're once again grateful to Caltrans for help supporting our activities around propane, which I can launch into next, unless there's any questions about snow removal right now.
No, anecdotally, I heard positive comments about this last storm in comparison to the previous storms. So it looks like, at least anecdotally, there's some good progress. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, John. I will certainly pass it on to the staff. They're very dedicated and they're working really hard to try to get everybody out or in or moving around. But I will let them know. Jumping into propane, yes, it's been a challenge, and a lot of it is it's weather and road related. We had a truck trying to come up last week that threw its chains and just didn't make it. And if it had, we would have been fine shape, but all of a sudden everything closes to 80, 50, 88, of course. And so with the help of Billy Newman, who's now in Myers, in Christmas Tree Valley and Echo Pass, Caltrans maintenance supervisor, he helped us along with James Adams, the Woodford's Caltrans supervisor, along with I'm not sure if he's interim or the actual supervisors for Cables Lake, the resort's formerly ski patroller, snow guy, Jeff Breeze. Anyway, the 3 supervisors were able to escort a propane truck up on Wednesday to get the delivery in. So again, a great thanks to Caltrans for getting that truck in. We're supposed to get another load who's probably here now and then another one tomorrow. And so hopefully if the weather cooperates, we can keep things going. But meanwhile, staff's been working really hard to keep the vents open. In this last storm cycle, we actually had 4 or 5 fire calls that related to vents being blocked by heavy snow loads, including our own Lava Rock Lodge next to our building here, which we do a great job keeping up with it. But when the roof sheds tons and tons of snow, you have to get out there and clean those vents so the equipment works correctly. So we are doing everything we possibly can to get deliveries in Kirkwood. We are thinking outside the box. We're contacting other vendors, and we're learning that a lot of the vendors are getting the propane from the same supplier, Kiva Energy. And we are also not alone in the Tahoe, Northern Nevada area where there's still challenges of getting propane delivered. It's no longer a supply issue. Now it's a equipment driver issue. So, but we'll continue to update the board on how that's going. That's it for propane. I'll segue into solid waste unless there's any questions about propane.
Well, the other item is, I think, the Newsom's announcement allows the drivers to extend their hours a bit.
Yeah. And I appreciate you bringing that up, John. I forgot about that. Yeah, with the emergency declaration that the state's declared due to the massive amount of snow, it also extends the hours that the operators can drive. So we can get them the 12 to 14 hour, turnaround times. Without last Wednesday, we district put up the driver in a hotel room for the night just to ensure that he would still come up here. He had just a regular cab type truck, didn't have a sleeper unit, and I thought it was worth a couple $100 to put him up to make sure we had propane. So,
okay, thanks.
Sure. Solid waste, like everybody else, roads are closed. ACES unfortunately couldn't make it up here, and so we are overflowing at the brims. However, they did make it. I authorized them to drive around on Highway 50 today. They did have one truck up here that was able to do a tip for us. Now that the spur's opening up at hopefully 5 o'clock tonight, they'll bring another truck in tomorrow and we'll get caught up there. But our biggest challenges are not only snow, for example, Whiskey Towers location, illegally parked cars either in front of dumpsters or in the area that prevents the garbage truck from tipping the dumpsters there. So I talked with some of the HOAs today to just to remind them, hey, please resurrect the signs that are buried in snow that say no parking. Be aware that ACES comes up typically Mondays and Fridays, and on special occasion when we need them. But if they could help us pass on to the homeowners that, yeah, it looks very convenient to park in front of a dumpster for 5 minutes. That might be the time when the truck's there trying to tip it. And, we can go several days without another opportunity to get that dumped tip. So we're just trying to spread the word on solid waste. And then I guess the last thing I wanted to talk
Rick,
about.
Just with that regard, I mean, I know
sure.
if you're talking about like a major city, then they're parking, they usually send like a car out in front of a street sweeper, for example, to go make sure things are cleared. Mm-hmm. Not asking to put more burden on the team, of course, but is there a process for that? Is there something that we could do to preempt those sorts of issues by being more assertive and, I don't know, pick up that spare tow truck that we have sitting around to go tow cars out of the way, of course. But, is there something like that we could consider, or I don't know, anything to preempt that a little bit more?
No, to answer your question, we don't have staff or the ability to try to move people around prior to the tips. The tips are 5 a.m. in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. And it's the person that came in late at night who thought, hey, I can just park here, I'll be fine because there's so much snow. That's, I guess we could hire Kirkwood Security to go around and monitor that for us, but I don't think the homeowners would want to pay the additional cost for that. Again, it's just support from the HOAs to monitor and provide education to the homeowners and guests in Kirkwood about solid waste.
Is anything enforced when we find a car in front of a dumpster? Ticketed?
No.
Does anything happen? Just they drive on and that's it?
Just drive on. We're not allowed to tow. We're not allowed to ticket. So, and in a normal winter, we might have one occurrence. This year, we've had several just because there's just no place to park. And so, but as the sun comes out, days are getting longer. The roads are melting out quicker, as you've probably noticed if you've been around up here. And so things will subside, but with this next storm predicted tomorrow night, I'm sure we're going to have a mess Monday morning. Any other questions about solid waste? And then the last thing, during the snowstorm last week, we lost half of our treatment plant due to a VFD. So that means we were pumping at half capacity. We called technicians and Democracy Air Control to come out and try to mitigate the issue. It was discovered that a VFD had failed. In the process of trying to repair the VFD and also trying to get some auxiliary equipment back online, our treatment plant completely went offline at 9 a.m. this morning. And we consequently have had to pump to our emergency storage tank during the day today to try to basically stand by until the two technicians here could hopefully resolve the issue. I'm pleased to announce at 2:55 that we were able to get half the plant back up and running. And we're in the process of chasing down additional equipment such as a device net and an HMI pad and a couple other things. Sorry, I'm looking at an email that's telling me this. But long story short, I'm glad we're doing improvements in the treatment plant. It's long overdue. And the last time we had a similar occurrence in 2019, the district spent over $35,000 making repair. Hopefully today we're not going to have those same costs, but it's just yet again, things happen over there and there's nothing on a shelf at Home Depot that saves us. It's literally a lot of technical support, and we're actually going to eBay and Craigslist to find equipment to fix the existing plant to get us through. But right now it's running. So thumbs up to Aqua Sierra and Derek for being there and getting us back up and running for the weekend. And that's my update on wastewater.
Yeah, and I really appreciate. I can imagine the amount of stress this type of winter can bring on you guys. It's just a ridiculous amount of snow, closed roads. I very much appreciate it, and definitely can appreciate the amount of stress to keep it all running. All right. We have standing committee reports. I could start off. I don't really have anything further to report for finance or for personnel, unless I'm missing something, Eric. I think we're good.
Finance will meet next week. We're going to be rolling behind the board for the next, this month and 2 more months through May. So it'll be a little bit odd for 3 months.
Okay. Planning?
Planning met, and I noticed it's not in the board packet, so I'm worried that I might not have actually sent the final version to you, Eric, or not. So I apologize.
Yeah, you sent it. It didn't get in. We're all remote, so things. Who had Adobe Acrobat Pro was a great juggling match for staff this week, because I don't have it on my laptop, so I couldn't put it in. So apologize for that. We'll include both next month.
I appreciate that. Should I just give a verbal update then now?
That'd be great.
Sure. So we had 4 agenda items in a planning meeting, which was on February 15th. First one was talking about the needs assessment. Eric had found a consultant that should be able to conduct the needs assessment for us. That's, as a reminder, has been taking a lot of effort for him to find someone who's been looking since, I believe, the fall. So thank you, Eric, for the diligence to get that. Currently, conversations around scope and fee are in progress. Second agenda item was standard AMU discounts. There's no progress to really report here, but we are continuing to aim to have this topic ready for the board in the current fiscal year. So any potential changes could take place in advance of the upcoming 23-24 fiscal year. Topic 3 was energy efficiency rebate program. There has been some progress by the staff gathering information about other programs related to this. And then the last one is the fuel switching rebate program. This would be wood or propane in general, but no real progress to report on this one. But one of the suggestions was from one of the members in the committee that we could think about this a little bit more, given some of the conversations on the usage of this in light of the earlier conversations of propane. And this could be moved up, because the order I gave you is the order that we're working in right now.
All good. Thank you. With communications?
Yeah, communications met, and we talked mainly about the shortcomings that we currently have with the fire department and what potential options we have. And I think that the main thing that we want to focus on is making the rest of the community aware of the needs of the fire department. And I'm thinking that if we work with the Firewise committee, they're very good at communicating to our community going forward. I think that'd be very positive, so that when this actually does, when and if this comes to a vote, people can make an informed decision. It's a challenge in a community like ours, where it's second homeowners and a lot of new homeowners. to try to bring them up to speed about what our needs are with the fire department, especially since they've been so generous in making contributions over the last several years towards the fire department. I think it's going to be important that we communicate what our options really are going forward. And as far as operations committee, we covered everything.
All right.
Can I speak to LAFCO since that is
Sure.
Bob's not here? So LAFCO is meeting on Tuesday in a couple of days, and some of that, there are two main unfinished business items, and one of them is the sphere of influence, in particular, where this is something that we've been talking about for a while now, where this will likely come back to us to update a previous version that was only drafted but never approved. And so we're trying, Bob and I have been trying to work with the staff there to reuse the work that had been done previously, as opposed to starting from scratch. And that will be the main one of the main agenda items for Tuesday's meeting. And I'm sure we'll have more to say on that after that meeting's over.
Very good. All right. We don't currently have any temporary advisory committees, do we, Eric?
We do not.
And so general discussion?
I had a couple of things for general discussion and thoughts that I'd like to just run by folks and consider for future agenda items. One is on the conversation of propane. I understand all the challenges here, and I think planning, we will talk about fuel switching and things like that. My main concern right now is that fuel switching is slow. Like, we're not going to be taking, a lot of propane usage and doing that immediately, and certainly not in the next month, but probably not even in the next winter. And I'm just wondering if we should be accelerating our conversations. And I brought up a lot of thoughts on I think it was a January, February meeting about on the demand side management side of things, whether we should consider a different rate structure to price based off of our where we are in our capacity, or signing contracts to have demonstrated demand reductions for those, what Eric, you said 5 or 8 customers who are a third of our usage, and maybe targeting them to have contracts on the books where we can actually reduce them. And I think that's something that, capacity will not solve that per se right now. And those are longer term solutions. And I would personally rather to see us work on the demand side than on the capacity side, for many reasons. But I'm just worried that some of the things on fuel switching and the conversations we'll have will take too long, and we might not even make it out of this winter without a lot more stress. Maybe we'll be okay now with the next storm or two and it'll ease up, but I would like to see us think about that for certainly the upcoming winter on the demand side, if we could take more immediate changes. On the second,
I absolutely agree with that. I think it could. There's potential there for some much faster relief than a long-term fuel switching program, and we really wouldn't. We'd like to avoid having to build more capacity, but we also can't run out of fuel in the valley. So that's a project that's just in its early stages. We may not end up not doing it and avoiding that cost. If we do go ahead with it, it's going to take a couple of years.
Right. Which is why I think it's even more relevant to have something more active on the demand side if we could. So I would like to see us try to address that in the near term.
I agree.
And I think, again, I mentioned this a little bit on the communication side, and I think Brandy, you had mentioned we don't have a communications team where we're sending out our messages, which I think have been great on our distribution. But if I remember, that was about a third of our customers. And I don't know if Peter, on the communication side of this, more that we can do to enroll people more, make another push immediately to get more people enrolled in that, and B, if communications can do more to someone on the communications committee could be responsible for taking those messages and posting them on Facebook if it's a member of the community, just to help get the word out while we do not have the things that I was just mentioning in place. So then that way we can hopefully get more voluntary reductions, recognizing, of course, that it's, a third of our demand comes from 5 customers, but every ounce of help can help here. And I would like to see us be a little bit more active in that regard. So that's one thing I would like to see us think about as well. And then the last one is, I think, Tommy, with some of the electricity pricing and some of the stuff you had mentioned from December in terms of the how the prices vacillate so much, I'm wondering if there's just a little bit more education that I know for me personally, and I won't speak for the other board members, in terms of how those prices are set. And you mentioned settlement can happen and adjust over a course of even a year. I think anything that you could provide to, I will speak for me personally, to help educate on how that works, and so helps me think about ways that we can maybe hedge risk or think about the exposure to risk on that, would be helpful. But not urgent, but that's just something else that I'm recognizing that I'm not educated about, that I think would be helpful to know more about. So those are the 3 things that I had in my mind.
Very good.
I've been trying to dive into it more and more, Doug. Calls into and emails into Shell. They're just not responding, breaking it down. They just give like these giant spreadsheets of like, this is what it is today. And it's a day at market is the hard part.
Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to ask you to tell me how you do your job on day to day, but I'm just trying to think about it from a perspective of like, what does this look like? What are our risks associated with this? Like, what are we going to get a bill 8 months from now that we're not prepared to pay because of some correction? How much volatility is in this? And I'm just trying to think about things like that. I'm not trying to step on your toes in terms of anything, but that's the kind of stuff I'm trying to think about.
Not at all. And I appreciate you looking at it. I think it fascinates me. I know it's normally the adjustments are only like $1,000, kind of give or take back and forth, but they keep rolling in, and I have no idea what charges them. But it's something I'm actively looking into. I know.
Yeah. Thanks for the work on it.
Any other items for general discussion?
The only thing I would say is just that I alluded to it earlier, but just a reminder, our next meeting will be our next 2 will be special meetings. One will be Monday, April 3rd, and then it will be Monday, May 1st, due to availability of staff and some board members. So we need to push it early in May as well. So hopefully everyone can make the May 1st one.
And Doug, you're out April?
I will not be at the April meeting, unfortunately. I'll be out of the country, my family.
Having fun.
I will be having fun.
I hope so. All right, all good. I think this is a world record. Shortest meeting ever. Do we need a motion to adjourn, or can we just adjourn?
We can just adjourn, or you can make a motion, either one.
I think we're good. So thanks everybody, and drive safely if you're going to head over the pass or the spur. I'll be out there in about an hour and 45 minutes. So
yeah. All right. Thanks everyone. Stay safe.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Eric, how soon is Brittany